It's just good to see your faces again. Hope that you all have been doing very well, and I see good things about what's happening here at Speed Church. We want to take a look at Pilate. Pilate, he wasn't the most popular man on the block. He was appointed, and he wasn't popular because he had the authority to appoint the high priest for the Jewish people. He kept Caiaphas, who had already been there when Pilate was appointed. He put pagan symbols around of the emperor around Jerusalem, and on the coins he put pagan images. He just wasn't the most popular man around. When there was an uprising, he was brutal. He'd been called to, and would be called again to Rome because of sometimes even his brutality. So even Rome recognized that he wasn't the best. It's kind of interesting, but the Eastern Orthodox Church consider him a saint. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church, because they think that because of he's had washed his hands and said, I have nothing to do with this man, thought that he had converted and become a Christian. We don't know for sure, but what it is. But Pilate was not. What we do know is that he ordered the crucifixion of Jesus. Jesus, he would go to Pilate, would have Pilate order the crucifixion. Jewish people could not have someone executed. They couldn't carry out capital punishment. And then we read today that Pilate's wife had a say in the matter. She tells him to have nothing to do with this man. He's innocent. And Pilate surely struggled with that. Have nothing to do with this man. But the crowds, they're calling out for his crucifixion. Have nothing to do with this man. Hard to say what she meant by that exactly. One of the things we know that she said that he's innocent. So don't be involved in this mess that's been brought to you. But the crowds were hollering, crucify him. Pilate wanted to keep the peace, and so even though he might have known that it was wrong to have Jesus crucified, he went along with the crowds, submitted to them, and lots of people cried out for his crucifixion, and he was eventually crucified. The crowds, they're like that. Crowds, they call out for the crucifixion of Jesus, and crowds are like that. Crowds want us to do this or that, and especially sometimes when we find ourselves in high school or junior high, the crowd's calling us to do something, and it's tempting to go along with the crowd. Even when we're adults, sometimes the crowd cries out for us to go along with the crowd, but we sometimes yield to that. We can identify, I think, with Pilate in the midst of this, where he says, where he allows the crowd to dictate what he's doing. Pilate surely felt torn. His wife told him to have nothing to do with it. Man, he was manipulated and called to crucify Jesus. He was already in trouble with the powers that be. He would be again. We've been in Pilate's shoes. Jesus says, love your enemies, but sometimes we go along with the crowd. Jesus says, and the scriptures tell us to welcome our aliens, but sometimes we go along with the crowd. We've heard Jesus say, die to yourself, but oftentimes we find ourselves living for ourselves and ignoring the ways of Jesus because of what the crowds say. We've heard Jesus say, give all that you have, but we just want to hold back just a little bit more. As a kid, maybe you've seen a kid picked on a playground and stood up for him, and other times maybe not so much. Judas, he was a part of the crowd. He wanted to go along with those. Peter, he was a part of the crowd when he denied Jesus. We find ourselves in the same place, a part of the crowd. Pilate's wife said, have nothing to do with this man. And I think she meant, don't condemn this man to death, but keep holding him, see him as who he is, innocent, one sent from God. Oh, the crowds, they went along with each other. Pilate went along with the crowds, but not Jesus. He would not listen to the crowd, no matter how mean they could get, no matter what they could do or to him or not do to him. He didn't go along with the crowd, but rather he stuck to the will of God. The crowds cried out for hatred and bitterness, not Jesus. He cried out, in spite of what the crowds were saying, he cried out for love and mercy. Jesus wouldn't listen to the shouting crowd. He just listened to love. He just listened to God. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend McGillard. Departing hymn is "Oh, How He Loves You and Me," number 254.